Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Rouge Rugby podcast, a podcast focusing on Canadian rugby. I'm Stu Hardy, joined as always by Derek Brissett. And Derek, we finally had the MLR final in an eastern, I would say city, but New Jersey. Is it really New York, or is that an age-old debate we're going to have until the cows come home?
I mean, Harrison, New Jersey is still a city. So I mean,
but an MLR, is it an MLR city, or is it just?
I mean, it all counts. I mean, considering like it all counts. Of course, it counts. An eastern city, New York is obviously the city. If the Jets, Giants, and they play in New Jersey, they still rock New York proudly in their name. So I mean, that's shout out to the New Jersey Devils, by the way, being the one team from Jersey that actually represents the state proudly. That's actually in New Jersey. They stink at hockey right now, but hey, at least they where they're from proudly. But yeah, no, New York's fully deserved, and I mean it's people make fun of it. There's obviously especially the Free Jack fans really love the New Jersey joke, like the New Jersey All Blacks. Yeah, the New Jersey All Blacks and just the New Jersey jokes in general. They love that. But I mean, speaking another team from New York that plays in New Jersey is obviously the Red Bulls.
Yeah,
in which the stadium that they generously gave to Rugby New York for the day. And man, honestly, watching the game, I don't watch soccer like at all, so I don't think I've ever actually watched a game in this venue or whatever, and it looks amazing on TV.
Oh yeah,
but I love that great. It's just a gigantic Red Bull can. Like it's just a gigantic Red Bull advertisement. It's like, it's amazing.
Well, if there's one company that knows how to market themselves, it's definitely Red Bull.
I was gonna say, so like, what is like Red Bull's got like the soccer team, the New York Red Bulls. I think they got like a couple hockey teams in Europe.
They've got a couple soccer teams, actually. They got Red Bull Salzburg. They have Munich.
I think they have a hockey team in Salzburg, too.
Yes, they do, yeah. That's the thing. It's an Austrian company, and Salzburg is near enough the nearest city to...
Austrian company?
Yeah.
Oh, I did not know that at all. Oh,
yeah.
All right. You've taught me something already, Stu. That's what people come for. But yeah,
when you used to work for Red Bull in Salzburg, you have to learn these kinds of things.
There you go. So you and like Max Verstappen were technically co-workers for a bit. Is that how that works?
Yeah, funny enough, he can't drive. Yeah, terrible at parking, but otherwise,
exactly. Always complain when you got to take out the little. Did you get to drive the little like Red Bull Mini Coopers that have the can coming off the top?
No, that's reserved exclusively for the sales reps and around college campuses and things like that.
They don't have college campuses in Austria?
They do, but, I'm a professional. I'm in my work environment at that point. Anyway, I think we're getting off topic. And
we're never off
back around to rugby. And to the MLR final itself. As we mentioned, it was held at the Red Bull Arena in New Jersey, where New York were hosting Seattle. And, this was a really good game, gotta admit. Seems that we were both off with our initial predictions of who's going to score the first tries and the first penalties. We both said New York, and it ended up both going to Seattle with Martin Iosefo scoring the first try within 4 minutes. Classic Seattle, making sure that they can get the points on the board as soon as possible when it gets to the championship match. And Alatimu getting the first penalty within the 13 minutes. However,
I called that one.
Yeah. Well, you did. I don't think I did. But
at Alatimu, because it's Alatimu, obviously.
Oh, yeah, of course. So that does make sense. But then Will Tucker was able to get the first try for New York 4 minutes later in the 8th minute. And then from that point onwards, there was a, stalemate, I'd say, till about the 24th minute when New York were able to get over the try line. It was brought down illegally and resulted in a penalty try and Rhino Hubs being sent to Simbin for 10 minutes. And then just as he gets back into the game, eventual man of the match and now retired player Andy Ellis was able to get over for his try. And, New York held the lead at half time. And, it certainly helped when Mayhew was able to get over for their team's fourth try in the 56th minute. And Emery was not that great from the boot, I gotta say. He's only able to score one of the conversions. Of course, the penalty try meant there was no kick needed for that. And he was able to get a penalty in the 50th minute, but, that's 2 out of 5 kicks. So, it wasn't great for him. But at the same time, when you're scoring tries, you don't need to be that many worries about getting penalty. And speaking of kicks, if Emery wasn't going to get it, then it was Sam Windsor getting that incredible drop goal in the 73rd minute that practically sealed it for New York. I would say, though, that when it got to the 60th minute, Matenga was able to score a try and get Seattle back up to 15 points. And then there was a yellow card to Will Tucker. Yeah, and I don't know about you, Derek, but for me, it was like 15 minutes left to go. About at this point, I think it was like 12 points that Seattle were behind, and I was thinking, okay, I'm not comfortable with this at all. I think Seattle have it within them to score 2 converted tries, and they'll be like right back in front, and we could have like another nail biter finish. And it looked to be going that way because Will's brother, Brad, who plays for Seattle, looked as though that he had got himself over the line for a try. However, TMO called it back and he was playing the ball off his feet. So it became a penalty to New York. And really, after that point, Seattle weren't able to capitalize on the man advantage. And yeah, sure enough, Sam Windsor was able to get that drop goal whilst they were a man down. And then they were just able to hold it out, and it ended with Andy Ellis disrupting Reed Watkins in the final scrum of the match to cause a knock-on, and then the whistle blew. And finally, the East has a MLR champion in amongst their teams as New York took the win. New York 30, Seattle 15. So this is obviously New York's first MLR championship, and as I mentioned, the first MLR champions to be in the Eastern Conference. This is also Seattle's first loss ever in the MLR postseason. So stretching all the way back to 2018, they are on a 6-1 record, and that one unfortunately came at the worst possible time for them. Derek, what did you make of the game?
Well, I think first, I think in a playoff format where it's single elimination, the one is always going to come at a bad time because it's not like hockey or something where you can recover from that one. So there's never a good time, but the finals is especially bad. Seattle, though, obviously kind of a fascinating story as we were talking about going into the game, right? Like they're basically playing with house money. They've they've used that house money quite well. Beating San Diego, beating Houston, and then, to earn their way back into the MLR final, which, kind of seems like almost like a tradition at this point. They just seem to always be there no matter what. I thought it was fascinating the way the game started because obviously before the game, like last week, and a lot of social media posts talking about it, was that the game is being played at 9 a.m. Pacific time, which is obviously quite early for probably a lot of the Seattle players. We suggest on the podcast last week, maybe trying to adapt to that a little bit earlier in the week. To my surprise, it was like Seattle was the team that came out guns blazing, right? And Iosefo picked up that opening try to give them the quick 5-0 lead. Rare miss from Alatimu on the conversion, but a big lead to start. And then just, I guess, as the game kind of progressed, it just kind of New York just seemed to constantly be gaining a little bit of momentum, constantly, things just kind of started going their way. And I mean, it didn't really take long. So obviously the first break that they really got was a few moments later where Iosefo himself dropped dropped a kick, and that set up New York with a scrum penalty, and then eventually Emery had a nice run toward the line off a scrum, and then as you said, Tucker was able to go in and pounce on that, and was able to finish off that try. So it was a lot of so New York kind of found themselves back or not that they were out of the game, but they bounced back really quickly from that. And then I feel like from that point on, it was kind of mostly controlled by the game was mostly controlled by New York. There was a lot of stretches played in Seattle's half during this game, a lot of big stretches. And I mean, the seawall is their famous nickname for their defense. And, it held up well, but I mean, it's, when you have to play in your own half that long, like it's eventually going to break, right? And obviously it did on a handful of occasions, penalty tries. That Andy Ellis try was like masterclass from the backs there, basically creating a 4-on-1 situation down the wing, which I mean, for even the best defenders in rugby are going to struggle with that once Ellis spotted that gap. And I mean, there was probably 4 New York players within like the 5-meter hash from the touch line on that play, and it's just choosing who actually gets to score the try at that point.
Yeah,
they did kind of review that though for forward passes, but I mean, I didn't really see any forward passes on that at all. But so Ellis obviously got a try, which I mean is obviously huge because he's going out on top as an MLR champion, scored a try in the game there as well, right? And obviously you saw some touching moments after the game as the boys showed some appreciation with a haka for him after the game, which is always a very touching thing to see. And so I thought that New York just kind of kept putting the pressure on. I thought Milner Scudder I thought was excellent during this game, especially just he seemed to, if Alatimu couldn't find touch, it seemed to just be a very big counter attack from Milner Scudder, who kind of took away a lot of Seattle's kicking downfield options, but also some of his own kicks were met with great kick chases, whether that was Ko Nahalo, Emery, or Milner Scudder himself, that were able to, cause a lot of problems. As I already mentioned earlier on the first New York try was an Iosefo dropped kick when he was under pressure. Milner Scudder had that one awesome play too, where he kicked it and was actually the guy that was on the chase himself and made a huge tackle that caused a knock on. So it was like everything just kind of seemed to be going right for New York. Just it was a really strong game from New York. And I mean, they used, their kind of what has given them success all season, right? They had a great maul that was leading to tries. They had a great maul that was also, gaining them territory, just moving the ball down the field when they were probably a little too far out to actually, drive a maul over for a try. The penalty try was obviously as a result of a maul as well. But then it was just like their incredible kind of like use of width. They were, going back and forth across the east-west across the pitch on a number of occasions. Ko Nahalo, Milner Scudder out wide were like unreal. That Ellis try, that was Jack Heighton that found his way out on the wing. And, I already mentioned that they were able to, had a huge overlap that they were able to capitalize on there. A lot of big attacking runs from all of those guys. And, just kind of seemed to be the two things that we've been talking about with this team for a lot of the year, right? It's they have a dominant maul, and when the attack gets flowing, it's really hard to stop, especially when they start using that width.
Yeah, and something else that needs to be mentioned is, and was picked up by others, is that Seattle seemed to be suffering from fatigue as the game went on. So they're probably going for your tactic, Derek, of having the best defense being a massive score to try and come back from. But unfortunately, it just didn't call together. There were a few instances of tries not being scored. For example, the aforementioned Brad Tucker try that was playing the ball off his feet, and then there was
so close too.
It was so close, but yeah, his knee was definitely on the ground. And I mean, I'm obviously not a high level player, but it's like or anything. It's just like, man, like it's like you obviously want to do that quickly, but it's just like
how much do you have to lift your knee off the ground to just kind of in order to do it, man? That was so close. I think he looked to me like he was just trying to get that down like really, really quickly.
Yeah.
I mean, he didn't have a lot of time, but man, like
just a second or two longer. Yeah, could have really helped.
That's like it's crazy that's like because that could have been a big turn. Like if he scores that try, that game's still in reach in the final 10 minutes, but it's just game of millimeters, really.
Yeah. And then there's also in the reverse of fortunes, Tuiloma was within inches of scoring himself, but then Travis Larson was able to get a turnover at the breakdown and then just turn it around and leaving. Eventually, it ended up being a penalty, which allowed Emery to stretch the lead. But, it's these things of how, small decisions can therefore have a massive impact on this game. And, it was a really interesting game to watch. It was, tense, obviously, because it's a final, but when the history of Seattle and how they've been able to snap victory from the jaws of defeat, and New York have during the season been able to hold a lead before having a lapse in defense or a lapse in concentration and then losing that lead, which is why they were third in the Eastern Conference going into all of this. So, it's good to see that New York closing it out. Disappointment for Seattle, but I also think this early in MLR's history, having one team win 3 of the 4 MLR championships could kind of put a bit of a stink on it all. But that's just me. As in,
this year it's a little weird, but I mean, like, if a team's good, a team's good. Like it's
but then again, it's like, how? Okay, are you a fan of the New England Patriots?
I hate them.
Exactly. And why do you hate them?
Because Tom Brady beat the Colts a lot, and it made me mad.
But that means they're a successful team, and they keep winning. And
so here's the thing, though. Here's the thing. I hate the Patriots and I hate Tom Brady. I will watch every single Super Bowl that they play in and cheer against them. Because at the end of the day, no matter what, so that's the one thing that's kind of funny with this league. At the end of the day, right? Sports is about stories.
Yeah.
Right. And stories like on this day, you need your heroes, say Andy Ellis, for example, going out on top. Yeah. Right. It's like you need your heroes, but the best stories, you also need your villains. Right. Tom Brady, if you're a Patriots fan, love him. Right.
Yeah.
But to every other NFL fan, that dude is the biggest villain. The Patriots Spygate, Deflategate, they cheat all the time. They have the best player. There's every single reason under the sun to hate the New England Patriots. And that's what made them the most compelling team to watch for 2 decades. And I think that's the one thing going into this. So with you're saying if Seattle won, that it's different. Obviously they didn't, so they're not. But I think that's the one thing with this league, I think, in all honesty, if there's so many good things happening with this league right now. The one thing that the league is kind of missing is a team everyone hates, or a player that everyone kind of not hates, but loves to hate. Like the same way that Patriots fans are the Patriots fans are honestly some of the best fans in sports. They love that team, right? But for everybody else, you watch the Patriots because you hate them. Stories need villains to sell it, and it's does the MLR have that villain to sell it? And maybe, who knows? Maybe I think some people kind of hate on LA and Austin a lot, obviously. And, obviously as what has transpired lately, perhaps there's good reason to hate on them a lot and stuff. But it's it would be awesome if the MLR had a Tom Brady type character where it's the guys, if he's on your team, you love him.
Yeah.
Right? But everybody else is when it comes to, he's playing he's playing for the Shield in the final. And it's if you are a fan of the team, you're cheering for them. All the other 12 fan bases are cheering against your team. That is something that, because that's what Tom Brady was. Right.
Well, this is the thing about Tom Brady. Well, first of all, I think there's a big support for him now in Tampa Bay, but that may
still hate him. I hate Tampa Bay now too by proxy. They all suck. Tom Brady's the worst person. He's not the worst person in existence, I'm sure, but I don't like him.
All right, fair.
Sure.
Well, I think the idea that I was getting at is that I think it's a bit too early in MLR's history to start having a dynasty team that just, if they make the final, that you pretty much like money's on them to take the.
But I mean,
I was going to say take the gold, but more like take the. Shield.
Yeah,
more accurate.
I guess but even that, I guess Seattle didn't even technically make the playoffs this year.
Exactly. That would be the most annoying thing. As in, you're not even meant to be here, but yet here you are.
Maybe that's our reason to hate them, right? But I think I guess one thing too, it's like obviously we're the Canadian rugby podcast. So shall we segue to talking about some of the Canadian performances in this game?
I suppose we should. I mean, we had a Canadian starter for each side. So for Seattle, it was Travis Larson, and for New York, it was Andrew Coe. A bit of a quieter performance than say the Eastern Conference Final.
But, a little bit quieter than his man of the match performance.
Yeah, just a little bit.
I mean, all right, that's
he was able to get in and amongst the players. He had like a few good runs. And Larson, a guy who like at the start of the season was like always on the bench, or if that, and struggling to like break through, and then maybe due to injuries or so, he's really been able to like come into his own and play settled. Then we have the guys that were on the bench for both teams. We had Quinn Nawadi for New York, and we had Reed Watkins. And Watkins, again, is a guy who seems to be establishing himself as the finisher for Seattle. I mean, and, he's been very versatile in the across the backs, because he's sometimes been coming on for a winger when Smith is still playing. Sometimes he's replacing a winger, and there's a bit of move around as he moves into the scrum half position. And when he came on at like the 60-minute mark, he definitely turned the favor back towards Seattle. I mean, it was his inclusion that allowed Matenga to able to get to the try, which gave Seattle another 7 points with Alstini's conversion. And then it was just a case of, you can be a good player, but if the other team has a lot of good players, then it doesn't so much even itself out as if it's still against you in that regard. I mean, and Andy Ellis, he was off in the 59th minute and then back on in the 68th minute because of a HIA, I believe, to Conor McManus. And, and when you're up against Andy Ellis, as was signified by the end of the game with Ellis coming around to like force the knock on Watkins, it's like, that experience holding out in the end. And, Watkins was signed for the Arrows in 2021 as cover whilst the Canadians were on international duty. He didn't have the opportunity to play for the Arrows, but then he's been signed by Seattle. And, for what we could properly regard as his like rookie season, he's done incredibly well. And unfortunately, there's not really much to say about Nawadi because he was only involved in the final 5 minutes as well. But, Nawadi has been with his team now for like 2 seasons. He's, established amongst the New York faithful. And yeah, it's good to see him. Obviously, would have preferred him to have like a bit more time, but when you're up against Naholo for that position, I can understand why. Nawadi, however, will be available for selection for the Rugby Canada men's 15s games in the next couple of weeks. So, may not have seen as much as we could have for New York, but definitely hoping he'll have more of a chance in the national outfit.
Yeah, what a back line in New York.
Oh yeah,
Ellis, Heighton, Emery, Fuatai, Coe, Naholo, and Milner Scudder. That's a legendary MLR back line. And I think, when you have Quinn Nawadi, who has clearly shown that he can play not only in the MLR but also test level. And as I mentioned last week on the pod, I was like, I think he should start for Canada during these games that are coming up this week. And Like if Nawadi's coming off your bench, like you just that's an embarrassment of riches that New York has, and
Yeah.
obviously a major contributing factor to why they won the Shield. Um, but yeah, so obviously, as you kind of said, Nawadi a little bit. Nawadi came on final 5 minutes, so not as loud of the game as some of the other Canadians. But it looked like the New York players were kind of still taking some social media pics after they won, because obviously you party after you win. Nawadi in the kit at like the bars and stuff. That's an A+ move. That's the true team player. That's the kind of guy that I would personally want on my team. So glad to see him contributing in the most important ways for this championship, especially during the post match. As you said, Cole, I thought Cole was great in this game. Tons of line breaks, some big carries, made a couple of really key tackles. Really kind of shut down the wingers for Seattle, and they didn't really have much attack on the edge. I mean, obviously they didn't have too much attack, as we mentioned earlier. New York had the lion's share of possession, but I thought Cole throughout the game was brilliant. He made those defensive plays when he was called upon, had some huge runs, and a big contributor once again. Larson I thought he was great. I mean, you mentioned his breakdown steals. He had, he was doing some great work there. He also, was instrumental in setting up Matenga's try in the second half. He had a nice run, did well to like protect the ball too and get a nice little offload off. Obviously too, that Watkins was part of that buildup, and as you kind of mentioned, he was just a massive spark for Seattle. It kind of, New York looked like they were in complete control of that game until like Watkins came on, and it was Watkins that kind of seemed to inject some signs of life into the team. So that was a good performance from him. Obviously, perhaps coming on too little, too late, and he was part of the build up to Tucker's non-try as well. So I think all four Canadians, man, had a pretty strong showing during this game. So things you love to see as a Canadian rugby fan, and it's I'm looking forward to seeing Nawadi continuing to play for Canada in the next couple of weeks, and Cole looking forward to whenever he decides to throw on that Canadian jersey for whichever team he decides to do that for in the future, because he's listed as injured or unavailable, so obviously not injured, but unavailable for whichever reason. So hopefully that means he'll be back at some point, though, because he had a phenomenal season. He was throughout this entire year, right? So I was going to say too, the guy I totally forgot to even mention too with that back line too is Ed Fido.
Yeah.
So I mean, like, what's crazy that back line, the back line in New York's nuts when you kind of break it down, right? So he had all those tries too, but it was like Fido and Co kind of battling for that try scoring lead on that team all year, right? Playing in the same position and stuff. So it's I thought Co had a great year, and man, and hopefully we'll see him in a Canada jersey soon enough. But yeah, just great showing all around from the boys, and congrats to Rugby New York on winning the Shield. And I guess so any thoughts, as this is obviously the fourth final that the league has had, 5 years, but fourth final. Any thoughts on like just the broadcast, the presentation of it, everything that like everything about the final that you got to consume as a product watching this?
Yeah, I thought it was an incredibly well presented product. It obviously helps that you're in a stadium that is designed to have high definition cameras in there and all those angles. And obviously the crossover from soccer level to rugby level is very similar. The TMO replay cameras I thought were fantastic as well, showing like multiple options, and the communication between the referee and the TMO was also very clear as well. Speaking of that, the whole refereeing team did a fantastic job. Nothing, too egregious or beyond the. I did see a deliberate knock on that seemed to go
I was gonna say that's one of the great things about the game, though. It's like we're not talking about the refs in this game.
Yeah,
Exactly.
no, that was, and that is a good. I did see what I thought was a very egregious knock on at the time, but then I went back and watched it again, and it was like, oh no, wrong player. So, but then again, obviously, if you're right there on the pitch and you have a much clearer view than I do, watching on the screen thousands of miles away, maybe you know more about it than I do. But yeah,
Probably.
yeah, fantastic job by all the everyone involved. And excellent presentation as well. I'm still not, maybe it's a European thing in me, but I don't like the shield being given to the team owner first.
Oh, that's a Canadian thing too, man. Stanley Cup, as you saw, straight to Gabriel Landeskog. It's this past weekend. Yeah, I don't the NFL, MLB, NBA. It's always to the owner first. It's weird.
The only thing I would say that they could do is when they're doing like if they were to do like a medal presentation as well, as in like every winner from the team that won. So every player from the team that won gets a medal saying they're the MLR champions, and then it's the team owner that gives the shield to the captain, and then the captain lifts it.
Yeah.
Then I'd be okay with it. But yeah, it's weird, but different cultures, different strokes for different folks. Ultimately, it went down really well. Great reception, and obviously because you could only sell out like the lower bowl of one side of the Red Bull Arena. It's great and close to the fans as well. So yeah, it just seemed like a really good game, really good presentation, and. But something I should mention is that the MLR Shield was not the only piece of silverware or the only thing awarded at this game. And that is because we had the winner of the S. Marcus Callaway Community Impact Award was also awarded at halftime. And it was awarded to the Toronto Arrow's very own Andrew Quattrin. So Andrew Quattrin was on the list of the nominees for the award. And as a result of winning it, Quattrin was presented with not only the commemorative trophy, which looked to be made out of glass, but I'm sure Andrew can confirm that for us. He also received a $5,000 donation to Optimism Place, which is his nonprofit of choice. And so a little bit of information we have about that. Optimism House. Quattrin's been helping run donation drives for Optimism Place for the last 7 years. It's a Stratford, Ontario-based emergency shelter for women who are experiencing violence. The organization provides basic needs such as food, toiletries, clothing, diapers, and baby formula free of charge, and offers an array of services and supports to women in need. So $5,000 have been donated to them on behalf of Andrew. And Andrew, congratulations. Many people have said that you've deserved this award, and obviously great leadership on and off the field, both with the Arrows and with Optimism Place, and your team, I believe, Oshawa Vikings as well. And and when Andrew was being interviewed, he talked about Marcus Callaway. Obviously, they must have had some interactions when the Arrows were down in Atlanta last year. And it's a great award to carry on Marcus Callaway's legacy. It's just like a feel-good factor.
Yeah, for sure. It's it's great to see. I mean, that's obviously a pretty historic award to be given out to Andrew Quattrin, obviously being the first ever winner for it. And I think him and Rumball were at the Oshawa Vikings as they went to the mixed ability event in a tournament in Ireland. And they were part of like the jersey ceremony for that. And then the Oshawa Vikings kicked ass at that tournament too.
Yeah, they finished, got to the final, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Finished runners up, but if anyone's, those games are actually on YouTube, and I'd recommend giving them a watch, because that last try, that was just absolutely great scenes to watch. But again, congratulations to Andrew, and congratulations to New York on winning your respective trophies. Now, unfortunately, there hasn't been a lot of other rugby news happening, or should I say rugby games, because we're currently in the in between of the season's ending and the international window about to start. But we do have an update from Rugby Canada's men's 15s head coach, Kingsley Jones, who put out a video answering a few questions on how the progress is going. So first thing to note is that the test between Belgium and Spain, these will be the first test on home soil since 2019. And, obviously COVID has delayed or ruined a lot of plans. For example, the test against England that had to take place at Twickenham was originally meant to be held in Toronto, which still hurts. But, these are the situations we've just had to be in, had to deal with, unfortunately, because of the restrictions that were in place. Jones also goes on to mention there's been squad selection strengths because they've been able to go to more MLR games this year. I think he said there's about now 60 Canadians playing in MLR at the moment. He also mentioned the issues. For example, there's a lot of injuries and a lot of players have said they're unavailable for selection for these summer tests, which is a shame, but you make do with what you have. He also mentioned as well that there's been a focus on younger players coming into the squad, as well as a few guys that really stood out from the Canada West selects, who also were in the Pacific Pride at the Coast to Coast Cup, and how there's been more opportunities for players to show themselves. He was also talking about they've got their eyes on Canadians who are overseas, and mentioned there's like one or two players in New Zealand who are eligible for.
Go get them.
Yeah.
Go get them.
Is one of them called Sam Malcolm by any chance? But
it doesn't matter what their name is. It's like, if go get them, then
yeah, go get them if they're available to play. Then absolutely. Come along, cross the Pacific, cross the Atlantic, whichever way you come around. Just end up wearing the red of the Rouge.
It's cool that there's Canadian eligible guys. Get them to play for Canada, though. That would be outstanding.
He also mentioned about how at the moment is we have the 7s, we have the 15s, we also have the Pacific Pride working together. Interestingly, Jones does mention that because they have a few 7s players eligible for inclusion in the 15s games for the summer, that he doesn't want to have players going back and forth, which is relates back to what you said, Derek, about, if you want to play 7s, play 7s. If you want to play 15s, play 15s. But he also was mentioning that the counterpoint of, 2020, no international rugby going on, 2021, limited. We've now just been able to have pretty much an entire 7s World Series happening. Obviously, there were more delays than that because the LA 7s are scheduled to be happening in August, just before the 7s World Cup. So still ongoing issues, unfortunately, but for the time being, if the 7s players do want to take part in 15s, he's clearly willing to let them come into the fold on a temporary basis. But it does seem as though that, for the men's side at least, he wants to be focusing on 15s. And he also mentioned how the Pacific Pride has about 25 guys in a full-time training environment, which is obviously helping them and helping them get considered for not only Canadian selection, but also for inclusion in MLR teams, or even possibly teams overseas. And then he moves forward to the mindset for 2027 qualifying, and how they've said that the focus needs to be put onto facing teams that are around the same area that Canada are in the world rankings. And he does make a good point of the last 10 matches that Canada have faced have included high-ranking teams such as not only Wales and England, but back to the World Cup like Italy, New Zealand, South Africa. And it's just not a nice feeling to be continually losing these games. And then obviously don't need to get into the whole World Cup qualifying fiasco.
Right. It's also not fun to continuously lose to the United States and Chile either.
Well, I mean, they did bring up beating United States. So, of course, we have to remember that. But yeah, obviously, when the losses are greater than the victories, it's not
which ended
not the great mindset. But so obviously, they're moving the focus towards thinking on teams like Belgium. Originally, the Spain match was going to be against the French Barbarians and would therefore have been uncapped. But now they have a real test, I should say, of facing Spain, who I believe are currently ranked 14th. And, Spain probably a bit bitter now that they have been confirmed that they are disqualified from the Rugby World Cup, and which is a shame, but rules are rules, and unfortunately, what World Rugby says goes. Which is make of that what you will. But then there's focus of when it comes to like 2027 qualifying. He was very particular with his words. He only mentioned like the next 2 years, so 22 and 23. Again, make of that what you will, but it does seem that the focus needs to be on the younger players coming up through the squad to have players that can not only compete at 2027, but also at 2031 as well. And, there's a lot of young guys in the squad. I think Kingsley Jones was watching our episode last week and listening to you, Derek, of like picking all the young guys going into the squad. So, it may be a case of that when the squad is announced for the match against Belgium, we will be seeing a lot of the younger guys starting. Although he did say that there's going to be reliance on the steady hand of our captains of Ben Lesage and Lucas Rumble as well. So,
it should be.
Yeah. Well, we'll probably get the squad announcement, if not on Canada Day, which would be very apropos, the day before. And yeah, so what did you make of the video, Derek?
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was fine. It was pretty standard Kingsley Jones video, really. I like that he's mentioning playing some of the younger guys and stuff, and so I mean, I hope he follows through with that and gets some significant playing time to some of those younger guys. He mentioned Jack McRogers specifically, so I'm really hoping that Kingsley Jones kind of backs up those statements and gives him a significant amount of playing time, as well as a handful of the other younger players. As you kind of mentioned, it's like as we mentioned, like, I mean, he's brought up a lot of the same points that he has brought up, and I mean, there's obviously things to certainly agree with them on. It's like, yeah, like they need more games, they need more playing time, and yeah, it's obviously, when he's counting down like the most recent matches, that includes a Rugby World Cup, which is why you're playing the All Blacks, South Africa, in those amongst those opponents. But yeah, like it's Spain, Belgium seems to be, unfortunately, the Canada's kind of ballpark right now, as far as the opposition is concerned. And so I mean, it'll be good it'll be good for the game. And I mean, as it's all about kind of the only thing that it's like I don't really like that he said in it is I don't like him bringing up that game against the USA where they won.
No.
I'm not a fan. I'm not personally a fan of that, because it's like, one, like you beat them in the first leg of a 2-leg series that you lost.
Yeah.
Right. So it's whatever, right? Like, you couldn't close that out, and you're out of the World Cup a couple weeks later after losing to Chile too, right? And you beat Chile in the first game too, but that game's never going to get brought up because Canada was terrible in that game.
Canada was losing that game up until the final kick.
And it's like, but they won, right? But that game's never going to get brought up, right?
No.
That USA game was probably the best game they've played under Kingsley Jones. which I think is probably why it gets brought up a little bit more, because it's probably a little bit of a sign of what the potential is. But it's like you got to pull that off more than once, right? You can't dwell on that. I like, right, like, I mean, I like that he's talking about, like, playing the younger guys, looking to the future, and that's why I don't necessarily like bringing up that game, because it just feels like like, look, what we've done in the past has worked, and the reality is what we've done in the past has not worked. Right. So
because you can turn around and say, oh, in the past we qualified for the World Cup.
And it's like times have changed.
Not now, but we did. So we can do it again. We won't, but we did. So we can. We won't, but we can. But we
won't. It's like times have changed, right? Like the it's there was like, it's just like, I mean, we've talked at length about kind of the fall of Rugby Canada, the men's national team, on this podcast, and like this game against Belgium, they played Belgium first. Belgium. This game against Belgium, right, is like the first step into trying to climb back up, right? You got to build towards the World Cup qualifying tournaments for the next World Cup. You have to start building to like climb back up the world rankings, to return to the point where like beating the United States or somebody is like common occurrence again, or at least maybe drag it back up to like 50-50, maybe not necessarily the dominant level that it was like 15-20 years ago, but maybe drag that back up to like 50-50, because I mean, the reality too is that winning against the United States ended what was the streak, 6-7 years?
I think it's like 2013.
It was like 14 games or something, right? For like how long between beating the United States, right? So it's obviously there's work to be done, and like I got to admit that I do really like the idea of being like, play all those young guys, and in that video it made it sound like that is something that he's gonna try to do. So I mean, if he follows through with that and starts playing some of the younger players and stuff, but then that'll be good, because you need something to, like, you got to start building towards next year, or toward not so much next year, but like the future, right? And sitting back and kind of like dwelling on like past victories that didn't amount to much in the long run anyways. I don't know if that is necessarily the right way to go about it, but in general, he does highlight some of the positive things too. Like, it's nice to see the Pacific Pride back and being able to contribute to players that are on the national team. Right, that's what it should be. It's it's a development program for the national team, right? Should be able to contribute players to it. And it's nice to see that there's guys that are playing in MLR that like Jack McRogers specifically, that are playing in MLR, are getting a lot better by playing in MLR, and are earning spots on the team through their play in MLR, right? And there's obviously a lot of MLR guys on this roster, and I mean, who knows what the situation is with all the guys based in Europe. He kind of vaguely addressed that during this statement, but if you got to rely on MLR, it's nice to have some options and stuff. And I mean, we highlighted a handful of players earlier just in the championship final that aren't part of his roster for these two games, right? So it's nice to have it's nice to have some options and stuff. But I mean, ultimately, at the end, like, hopefully I think my big thing for this, going into this series, is what I'm looking for, like, watching this game as a fan. And it's like, to be honest, like, I don't really care if Canada wins or loses, right? Because, like, as far as like the result goes, but I was like, I want to just start seeing signs that the team is like moving forward and like progressing, right? Like, young players showing some signs of brilliance, or signs that they can compete in at the test level. Maybe like a little bit of a shift in attack or a shift in defensive philosophies and stuff, as opposed to like, that video that Squidge put out 4 years ago that was just Canada basically running in straight lines and hasn't seemed to necessarily change a whole lot over the years or whatever, right? And like, so
so you need
changes on that and everything. So I mean, that's kind of what I'm looking for. It's like the scoreboard to me, I feel like they're going into this weekend, the scoreboard's secondary to showing like signs of improvement, signs of moving forward, and hopefully a handful of guys step up.
Yeah, I'm saying like now's the time to just throw it to the wall and just have a little bit of fun. Just try something. And if it doesn't work out, you can always revert back to running in straight lines if it gets you the points needed. The one thing I will hopefully look forward to is Michael Smith not getting sent off against Belgium this time round, which would be nice. But
that would be nice. But I mean, like that's Michael Smith though is the exact type of guy that should be like, honestly, like he should play 80. Like just be like, just play him until like you can't play him. Like guys like get, as it was Kingsley Jones was talking about, getting guys experience, and it's like like start getting like the next generation of guys and just be like, I mean, like like no, like there's obviously some older players and stuff still on the team, which I mean is needed for like leadership purposes, and obviously you're still going to try to win the game, so you need some of those older guys. But it's like like what's wrong with like playing like a front row of like, I know this wasn't my front row when I named the team, when I tried to name my team last week, but what's wrong with starting a front row of Liam Murray, Jack McRogers, and Tyler Rowland, just to be like, go, let's let's here guys, test rugby, go. Like there's nothing, because it's like,
because you'd rather do this now than do it in like 2 or 3 years time when you're trying to qualify.
Exactly. Like if I'm like, and even at that, like if Rugby Canada, man, like let's just start like booking test matches. Just be like, hey, whoever wants to play, whoever's willing, like, and even like whoever's willing to play, and just be like, all right, like we just start, because it's like this isn't like qualifying, right? When's the actual World Cup qualifying going to start? Like 2 years from now, 3 years from now? World Cup.
Well, I think like the initial phases of qualifying, because it's Rugby Americas North, have to do a whole level of qualifying prior to the US versus Canada or whatever it's going to be. So I think it does start the summer after the World Cup. So it will be like,
so, I mean, you got like at least 2 years probably. So that happens, right? Just try to get some tests. As Kingsley Jones mentioned, like, try to get some guys game time. Like, try to get some test matches in, or like, which is going to be great. But also like, like there's some vets that are like on this roster, which I mean, like deserve to be on the roster. They're the best players in Canada, but it's also like maybe have them come off the bench in the reserves instead. Right. And just be like, like let the kids play. And see, as you kind of said, it's like throw stuff at the wall and see what sticks, man. Like try guys at different positions that they haven't played. Like do something, like do anything that can kind of help, and try to figure out like combinations that work. Try to figure out what attacking, like that's even the other thing too. It's like you can try like a couple different like attacking or defensive structures too. Like test out different stuff, right? Because it's like I think right now you have a tiny window of time where you have nothing to lose. Like there's nothing to lose right now. If you know what I mean, if you lose to Belgium or you lose to Spain, it's like, I hope, like, just learn something from the game. Maybe you can lose to Belgium, but have a guy in his first cap blow your mind. Right, that game's a win if that happens. Right, you can lose to Spain, but score a try off a new set piece play that you never tried before. That game's a win.
That's the thing. You gotta try something new.
This is the time to try stuff. Get creative. Like do things. If you don't think it'll work, just be like, like, and for all the players that are playing too, like, just, honestly, like, just have fun. It's like you got nothing to lose. You're good at rugby. We know you're good at rugby. The results haven't necessarily gone your way, but like just go out and have fun. It's rugby. Have fun.
So if you aren't in Halifax and can't get tickets to this game against Belgium this weekend, you're wanting to watch the game, I can reveal that Rugby Canada will be making an announcement this Wednesday on broadcasters and how you can watch. But that will be by the time this episode's out, and hopefully we'll be able to share it with you on social media. And you can find us across all social media platforms, including Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at Rouge Rugby. If you like listening to this episode, you can do so with our previous episodes on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Anchor FM. If you like watching this podcast and you want to see more videos, including some interviews we had from post-game players, you can do so on our YouTube channel, again, at Rouge Rugby. Derek, where can the people find you?
I'm at Reset the Jet across all social media platforms, and I hope everybody enjoys their Canada Day long weekend. Enjoy whatever festivities and you decide to take part in on the Friday, and then enjoy Canada Belgium on the Saturday.
And you can find me across social media, but mainly on Twitter and Instagram at Hardman, spelled H4RDMAN. And to our friends south at the border, by the time we're recording our next podcast, it will be Independence Day. So hope you guys enjoy your long weekend as well. And it seems to be a long weekends, both sides of the border, as on Friday, yours on Monday.
I always forget about that American.
Yeah, they're very quiet about it.
It's my mind all the time.
Well, Derek, thanks for joining me for another episode of the Rouge Rugby podcast. And thank you all for joining us to hear us speak about Canadian rugby. We hope you can join us again next time.